The day before my period, I saw a note. In my fiancé's memo, predict tomorrow is her period. Remember to prepare pads and painkillers in the bag. I smiled, sweetly, touched by my fiancé's thoughtfulness, until the next day when my lower abdomen cramped with pain. I went through my bag with a pale face, but there was nothing inside. Dark red. Blood had soaked through my pants. Students pointed at my back and laughed. I thought he had simply forgotten, but the new intern teacher had just posted on her social media, just started work, and met Mr. Nice mentoring me. He even prepared pads and painkillers for me. This period doesn't hurt at all. The accompanying photo showed ibuprofen and a pad. The medicine was the brand I'd kept at home for years because of my cramps. The pad was the only brand I could use without an allergic reaction. I turned off my phone and stared at the ring on my middle finger for a long while, then got up and went to the principal's office to apply for the International Teacher Exchange Program. 7 years, and he'd never remembered my cycle. There was no need for him to remember it anymore. I submitted my application just as the dismissal bell hung. The principal looked at me with some hesitation, but finally couldn't hold back. Miss Jennifer, you and Mr. Luke are having your wedding next month. Just 2 days ago, you were still designing invitations. Now why? I knew the rest of her unspoken sentence. The exchange program abroad required a minimum of 3 years before returning. How could newlyweds possibly endure such a long separation? Moreover, everyone at school knew that I had chased after Luke for 4 years, dated him for 3 more, and was finally about to walk down the aisle. How could I bear to leave him? But the prerequisite for reluctance to part is that both people like each other. Just now, I suddenly understood that the man who agreed to marry me perhaps didn't like me as much as I'd imagined. I picked up the dried blood in the creases of my fingers. It had gotten on my hands when I was patting myself with thick wads of toilet paper. I said, he and I just are meant to be. Principal, I'm asking you for a favor. Please don't tell anyone about this. Okay. She frowned, her eyes revealing a trace of pity. All right, I'll keep this confidential for you. The earliest group leaving for the exchange program departs tomorrow. If you want, I can arrange for you to go with them. I nodded and bowed gratefully. Before leaving the office, my phone rang for the second time. I opened it and glanced. It was a message from Luke. What's taking so long? It's been 10 minutes since dismissal, and you're still not down. Ever since Luke and I moved in together, I had to leave with him every day after work. Please, Luke, you already have me. It would be too pitiful for you to go home alone at night, even though he taught seniors while I taught freshmen, and Luke's dismissal time was a full 2 hours later than mine, requiring me to sit in the office for 2 extra hours. I never found it hard, but today, after he'd only waited 10 extra minutes for me, he was already getting impatient. I pressed my lips together and carefully examined my feelings, but I didn't feel the suffocating pain I'd expected. That's when I knew I'd completely let go. Isembaka. Message, still have some things to do. You go ahead. Then I turned off my phone and didn't look again. I returned to the office to pack up my textbooks, organize the materials in class, information that needed to be handed over. And an hour later, I finally stretched my aching shoulders and left the school gate. Took out my phone to call a cab when a horn honked behind me. Startling me, I turned around to see Luke's car stopped behind me. I froze in place until he honked again and stuck his head out. Get in the car already. Why are you standing there like an idiot? I snapped back to reality and thought about the large blood stain on the back of my pants that might dirty his car. I pulled open the passenger door, about to sit down. Luke glanced at me and handed me a black plastic bag. Suddenly speaking, wait. I took the bag, momentarily confused about what he meant. You know no period is coming, and you still don't know to bring a pad. Jennifer, you're a 28-year-old adult. Can you have some basic self-care skills? Walking around school all day with blood all over your ass. So many students asked me if you had a terminal illness. How embarrassing. Embarrassing. The smell of blood seemed to fill my nose again. Actually, I had remembered to bring pads, but one memo from Luke made me forget. I thought he'd finally learn to keep me in his heart, and the person he truly kept in his heart was someone else. I opened the plastic bag. Inside lay a pink pad, covered in a thick layer of dust. Clearly a brand that couldn't sell. Randomly bought from a roadside convenience store. If you really didn't have any, you could have borrowed one from someone. Why? Why did you have to hold up at school, refusing to come out, making me wait for you for a whole hour? Hurry up and go change, then get in the car. Don't get it dirty. He kept talking. On and on. I looked at his beautifully shaped, thin lips and only felt utterly exhausted. I closed the plastic bag and said weakly, Luke, I can't use this brand. Be precise. I couldn't use any mainstream pads on the market because they all had adhesive backing, and I was severely allergic to glue. Even touching it would make my whole body turn red, much less during my most vulnerable time. Sticking something with glue to my most private area. So I only used one specific brand, the only one I could use. Actually, when I first got together with Luke, I'd mentioned this. Luke, I'm allergic to glue and can only use this one brand of pads. If you see it on sale, remember to stock up for me. Okay. Luke didn't even look up from his game, scoffing. So, high maintenance. My fingers froze on my phone screen. I forced out an ugly smile. Sorry, I'll stock up myself. This is kind of troublesome, and you don't really understand. He always spoke to me like this, occasionally like he was wielding a club, beating down on me without warning, leaving me hurt and at a loss. But aside from this, he was actually pretty good to me. After we moved in together, he did all housework and cooked well, even fattening me up by 5 pounds whatever I wanted to buy. He wouldn't stop me, even when I brought home weird decorations that didn't match his home style at all. He just smiled, helplessly, at most childish. Over time, I thought that was just his personality. He didn't like remembering other people's habits and could be pretty cutting sometimes. Moreover, I was the one who pursued Luke first, so I used the occasional sweetness he gave me to dilute the pain, enduring like this for 3 years until I endured all the way to today, when I couldn't endure anymore. Why can't you use it? He'd asked me this Questioned 17 times, explained 16 times. This time, I wasn't going to explain anymore. I just casually tossed the pad in the trash and said flatly, if I say, I can't use it, I can't use it. Since you're afraid I'll dirty your car, I'll just take a cab home. His frown deepened, but in the end, he still opened the car door and stuffed me into the passenger seat. It's too late. Would it be safe for you to take a cab? Forget it. Just my bad luck. I'll go wash the car tomorrow. Again, this mix of good and bad. I ripped the seatbelt. In front of me, my throat tight. I simply took out my phone and contacted the wedding photo company we'd booked long ago. Hello, I'd like to cancel the wedding photo shoot scheduled for next week. What procedures do I need to follow? The contact I'd labeled wedding photo shoot kept switching between her name and typing over a dozen times before she finally sent a message. Miss Jennifer, 3 days ago, you changed your wedding photos to a couple's birthday. Art Photos and Mr. Luke contacted us to move up the shoot. The edited photos will be ready tonight. Your husband didn't tell you? My fingertip hovered over the screen. After a long moment, I realized it was shaking badly. I used my other hand to hold my wrist so I wouldn't drop the phone. I turned a glance at Luke. He looked straight ahead, driving seriously, everything like before, perhaps sensing my gaze. Luke tilted his head slightly, his tone unfriendly. Why are you looking at me? Can't handle being criticized a little? I didn't respond. Once my hand studied. Again, I slowly typed, can I see the photos? The shop owner went through the typing motions several times again before sending the photos along with a 10-second video. At the time, your husband repeatedly assured us he wouldn't cause us trouble, so we agreed to the change and early shoot. Miss Jennifer, please don't make things difficult for us. I had no mind to read what else she sent. I opened the photos, and a familiar face appeared in my pupils, stinging my eyes red. The person in the photo was Ivy, the school's new intern teacher, the same person Luke had given pads and painkillers to. There were many photos. I flipped through them one by one. Luke appeared in every single one. The two wore matching outfits, looking like an intimate couple. Finally, I clicked on the video. Ivy seemed a bit tired from the shoot and pouted in complaint. My shoulders hurt so much. Luke helped me rub them. In those short 10 seconds of video, I saw another side of Luke, incredibly gentle in a way I couldn't believe. All right, you little princess. Just one more set of photos. Hang in there a bit longer, and I'll treat you to a big meal after. Only then did Ivy smile again, happily raising both hands. Yay. My eyes felt sore. I reached up to touch them, thinking I'd feel salty tears, but there was nothing I couldn't cry over Luke anymore. It just made me remember some things. After we got engaged, I'd mentioned many times that we should get our wedding photos taken early or there wouldn't be time, but Luke refused. I don't like taking photos. You know that. Wedding photos are only for looking at. Completely useless. Why do you insist on forcing me to do something meaningless? I bit my lip and said softly, they are useful, Luke, when we're old and can't remember each other's faces clearly. We can take out our wedding photos to look at, and we can show our future children how happy mom and dad were back then. I promise. It's 2 settings, one for the wedding reception and 1 outdoor shot. Okay, I definitely won't tire you out. He glanced at me and spat out 1 word. Dramatic. Even so, I wouldn't give up. I kept pestering him for a long time, getting hurt to tears by Luke's harsh words several times before he finally, reluctantly agreed to take wedding photos with me, get it done in 1 go. I did tons of research from outfits to locations to photographers. I often stayed up until 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the morning making plans, then forced myself to be energetic for class the next day because the wedding date was close. I even paid extra to skip the queue and rush the editing, but the wedding photo shoot I'd carefully selected was secretly given by Luke to someone else, the man who claimed he didn't like taking photos used all his patience to accompany Ivy through 5 different settings, making me unable to tell whether he truly didn't like taking photos or just didn't like taking them. With me, cars shook and stopped in the underground parking garage. I opened Ivy's social media. Sure enough, she posted another set of photos, thoughtfully covering Luke's face. Ding, ding, ding. The best birthday gift I received early this year is, of course, beautiful photos, thanks to a certain someone. Luke stood outside the car and took out his phone. The next second his like appeared on Ivy's post. I looked at that tiny red heart and couldn't help but laugh. He never actively liked my posts. We're home. Why are you still sitting in the car? Seeing I hadn't moved, Luke knocked on the car window. I looked at him through the glass and suddenly spoke. You already went to take photos with Ivy. Why not just take the wedding photos I booked? You 2 match pretty well anyway. Luke's expression stiffened for a moment, then he frowned. Jennifer, what are you going crazy about? You changed my wedding photos and went to take birthday art photos with someone else, and now you're asking me what I'm going crazy about. Luke, you're the one who's crazy. I thought I could hold it in, but in the end, I still shouted my grievances, stared hard at Luke, wanting to hear an answer. He just clicked his tongue impatiently. Ivy just started working. She has no one to celebrate her birthday with. As her mentor, of course, I have a responsibility to take care of her, and it's just wedding photos. If we can't do it this time, we'll do it next time. Why? Such a big reaction? I looked at his casual expression and all my anger dissipated. Forget it, I said, completing the second half of the sentence in my mind. We won't need them. Anyway, only then did Luke's expression relax. He replied to another message on his phone. After I got out of the car, he got back in. All right, you go back. First, Ivy's birthday is tomorrow. She wants to treat the school teachers to dinner, but can't handle it alone. I'm going over tonight to help her prep. I blinked. I'd originally wanted to talk to him tonight about canceling the wedding, but now it seemed unnecessary. I nodded and returned alone to our new house. I took out my suitcase, but looking at the room full of traces of my life, I didn't take anything with me, only the large stock of pads and painkillers I'd accumulated. Then I called to cancel the wedding banquet. The deposit was non-refundable. The money Luke had given me was all stored on one card, which I placed on the nightstand. Not a cent missing. Finally, I took off the engagement ring and placed it on top of the card. I dragged my not too heavy suitcase and got in a car to the airport. Just before takeoff, I sent Luke a message. Luke, let's just forget about getting married. I've explained things to both our parents. Finally, I wish you find someone you truly like. The message sent, I put my phone on airplane mode, leaning back in my seat. I fell into a deep sleep. When I opened my eyes again, I'd arrived at my destination. I turned off airplane mode, and instantly hundreds of missed calls flooded in. Instantly, the screen went wild. The device vibrated continuously. In my palm, heating up as notifications flooded the screen. 142 missed calls from Luke, 38 missed calls from his mother, 17 missed calls from my own mother, countless WeChat notifications, SMS alerts, and emails. I didn't open the chat apps immediately. Instead, I opened my call log, staring at the long list of red missed calls. The earliest ones had started roughly 3 hours after my flight took off, right around the time Luke would have returned to our empty apartment after helping Ivy prepare her birthday dinner. I leaned my head back against the headrest, closing my eyes. I could easily picture the scene. He would have unlocked the door, perhaps complaining under his breath about how heavy the grocery bags were, expecting me to run to the entryway to take them from his hands. He would have called out my name, his tone slightly irritated, the way it always was when he wanted my attention. Then he would have walked into the bedroom. He would have seen the neat, undisturbed bed. He would have seen the single bank card sitting on the nightstand, tucked by the simple platinum band he had slipped onto my fingers 6 months ago. I opened WeChat. Luke's messages were a timeline of his changing emotions over the last 13 hours. 11:24 p.m. Jennifer, what is the meaning of this? Why is your ring on the table? And the card? Are you throwing another tantrum because of the photos? I told you Ivy is just an intern. I was helping her out. 12:15 a.m. Answer your phone. This isn't funny anymore. Your suitcase is gone. Where did you go? Did you go back to your parents' place? 1:40 a.m. I called your mom. She sounded confused, but said you called her earlier saying the wedding is off. Jennifer, have you lost your mind? The invitations are already sent out. My parents have booked their flights. You're embarrassing me. 3:10 a.m. Your principal just called me back. She said, you applied for the international teacher exchange. She said you're leaving the country. Is this a joke? Tell me this is a joke. You're going abroad for 3 years without even telling me. 5:45 a.m. Jennifer, please call me back. The last message had been sent just an hour ago. 7:12 a.m. Please, Jen, just tell me you landed safely. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the block button. My chest felt surprisingly light. There was an ache, certainly a dull, heavy throb behind my ribs, but it wasn't the sharp, breathless agony I had feared for years. Whenever I imagined losing him, it was the quiet, hollow feeling of a room that had been completely emptied out. I clicked on my mother's chat first. Jen, my child, what happened? Why did you suddenly call off the wedding and go to England? Your father and I are worried. Sick. Luke has been sitting in our living room since 3 o'clock in the morning. He looks terrible. He keeps saying it's a misunderstanding. I typed back a brief Message. Mom, I've landed safely in Manchester. Don't worry about me. The school has arranged a very nice flat for me here. As for the wedding, it's not a misunderstanding. I'll call you one side, get to my accommodation, and explain everything. Please tell Luke to leave your house. He has no right to bother you. I sent the message then. Immediately went to Luke's contact profile. I didn't delete him. I didn't want to show that level of active anger. Instead, I simply pressed mute notifications and moved his chat to the archived folder. I stood up, retrieved my small duffel bag from the overhead compartment and blended into the stream of passengers heading toward immigration. The exchange program was located in York, a historic walled city. In North Yorkshire, the school St. Jude's Academy was a beautiful, stone-built institution with ivy crawling up its Gothic arches. It was a stark contrast to the modern, sterile concrete of the high school where Luke and I had taught. My flat was small but cozy, located on the top floor of a converted Victorian terrace house, just a 10-minute walk from the school. The landlord, an elderly man named Mr. Abernathy, had left a small vase of fresh yellow chrysanthemums on the kitchen counter to welcome me. For the first 2 weeks, my life was a whirlwind of administrative paperwork, lesson planning, and adjusting to the British curriculum. The sheer volume of work was a blessing. It left me with no time to think, no time to grieve. I taught English literature and Chinese culture to Year 7 and Year 8 students. They were energetic, curious, and occasionally cheeky, but their lively chatter filled the quiet spaces in my mind. On my second Saturday in York, my period arrived. I woke up to that familiar dragging ache in my lower abdomen. For a second, a cold shiver of panic went through me. I instinctively reached for the bedside table, expecting it to be bare, expecting the dry, clinical embarrassment of the school hallway to repeat itself. Then I remembered. I got out of bed, walked over to the bathroom cabinet and opened it. Inside sat 3 neat packages of a specific organic, adhesive-free cotton pads I had ordered online the day after I arrived. Next to them was a bottle of gentle, non-steroidal liquid painkillers, prescribed by a local GP who had listened to my medical history without once rolling his eyes or calling me high maintenance. I took the medicine, changed, and went back to bed with a warm mug of chamomile tea. The pain slowly receded. I lay there, watching the rain slide down the window pane, realizing something very simple. Finding the right pads hadn't been a Herculean task. It had taken me a 5-minute search on a local pharmacy website and a £3 shipping fee. It wasn't that the task was difficult. It was that to Luke, my comfort had never been worth those 5 minutes. That afternoon, I opened my phone and scrolled through the shared school group chat from back home, which I hadn't yet left. A colleague had posted a photo of the staff lounge. In the background, Luke was sitting at his desk, staring blankly at his computer screen. He looked thinner, his hair slightly disheveled. Across the room, Ivy was laughing, showing something on her phone to another teacher. I also noticed that Ivy's social media account, which I hadn't blocked, had become remarkably quiet. The soft-filtered photos of her nice mentor had stopped. I did some digging through a clothes colleague, Sarah, who had texted me several times asking if I was all right. Jen, everyone is talking. Sarah's voice message said, her tone low and conspiratorial. Luke told the principal, "You two had a fight and you went abroad to clear your head, but then the wedding. Photo studio called the school office, looking for you because they couldn't get in touch with you to finalize the cancellation." The receptionist heard them say the shoot had been changed to birthday art photos for Ivy. Now the whole school knows. Ivy is terrified. She's been keeping her head down because people are giving her the cold shoulder. And Luke got into a massive argument with the vice principal yesterday because he missed a lesson. Planning deadline. He's never been this sloppy. I listened to the message twice. I felt a strange, detached pity, but no satisfaction. I typed back, "Thanks for letting me know, Sarah, but I'm really happy here. The students are lovely and the air is very fresh. How is the new curriculum going over there?" I redirected the conversation easily. I didn't want to be the woman who defined her new life by the wreckage of her old one. Back in our old city, the winter was approaching fast. Luke sat in the empty apartment, the silence pressing down on his eardrums like heavy water. The apartment was cold. He had forgotten how to program the thermostat. Jennifer had always taken care of the seasonal adjustments. The kitchen sink was piled high with 3 days worth of dishes. He had tried to cook a simple pasta dish 2 nights ago, but it had tasted bland, nothing like the rich, savory stews Jennifer used to prepare for him after day of teaching. She'll come back, he muttered to himself, scrolling through his chat history with her. It had been 2 months. She hadn't replied to a single one of his messages, though she hadn't blocked him either. That gave him hope. In his mind, Jennifer's silence was just a longer, more stubborn version of the quiet treatment she usually gave him when she was upset. She loves me, he thought. She chased me for 4 years. She won't just throw away 7 years of history over a few photos and a box of pads. His phone vibrated. He snatched it up. Instantly, his heart leaping into his throat. It was Ivy. 8:14 p.m. Mr. Luke, are you free tonight? The senior lesson. Plans are due tomorrow and I'm still really confused about the poetry unit. Can we meet at the cafe we went to last time? Luke stared at the message. A month ago, he would have jumped at the chance to play the wise, benevolent mentor to the pretty, adoring intern. But now, looking at her name on the screen, he felt a sudden, sharp wave of irritation because of Ivy. His life had fallen apart. His colleagues looked at him with silent judgment in their eyes. His mother had called him furious after finding out from Jennifer's mother that the wedding was canceled because of another woman. Even his father, a man of few words, had told him he was a fool for letting a girl like Jennifer go. He typed back a cold response. Ein Busse. Tonight, Ivy, the curriculum guidelines are online. You should be able to follow them yourself. If not, please ask the head of the department. A few minutes later, Ivy replied, her tone noticeably different. Oh, okay. Sorry to bother you. By the way, the vice principal said, my internship evaluation will be handled by Miss Chin from now on. I guess you're too busy. Thanks anyway. Luke threw his phone onto the sofa. He got up and walked into the study. On the shelf sat A thick folder labeled wedding plans. He opened it. Inside were pages and pages of meticulous notes, all written in Jennifer's neat, slanted handwriting. She had categorized everything.
The
Guest list, the dietary requirements of his distant relatives, the budget, spreadsheets, the color schemes that would match his favorite navy suit. There was a sticky note on the page for the florist. Luke is allergic to lilies. Make sure the centerpieces only have roses and eucalyptus. He stared at the note. He had never told her he was allergic to lilies. He had only mentioned it once casually during their first year of dating when they passed a flower shop. She had it for 6 years. And what had he remembered for her? He thought about the day she left. He remembered her pale face, her hand, clutching her lower abdomen, the dark stain on her pants. He remembered how he had yelled at her, calling her embarrassing and criticizing her self-care skills. He walked back to the bedroom, opened the top drawer of his nightstand, and pulled out the small, dust-covered pink box of pads he had taken back from the car. He looked at the label. It was a cheap, generic brand. He sat on the edge of the bed and finally opened his laptop. He typed into the search bar, allergy to pad adhesive. The search results flooded the screen. Contact: dermatitis from sanitary pad adhesive can cause severe redness, swelling, blistering, and intense itching. Many commercial brands use synthetic glues that contain sensitizing chemicals. Patients with sensitive skin require specific organic glue-free alternatives. Luke felt a sudden cold sweat break out on the back of his neck. He remembered her voice from years ago, soft and pleading. Luke, I'm allergic to glue and can only use this one brand. If you see it, remember to stock up for me, okay? And he had scoffed. He had called her high maintenance in front of his friends while playing a video game. Hey! Suffocating weight seemed to settle on his chest. It wasn't that she was throwing a tantrum. It was that he had slowly, systematically starved her of care until there was nothing left of her love for him but ash. He picked up his phone, logged onto a travel app, and booked a flight to Manchester for the winter holidays. December in York was magical. The ancient shambles were decorated with warm, glowing fairy lights, and the scent of mulled wine and roasted chestnuts drifted through the cold, crisp air. I had grown to love this city. I had made friends with a lovely history teacher named Clara, and we often spent our Friday evenings at a local pub by the river discussing literature and our very different childhoods. My skin had cleared up, the stress-induced acne entirely gone, and I had even gained a little weight, my face looking healthy and bright. On the last Friday before the Christmas break, the school held a small festive gathering in the staff room. I was holding a cup of hot cider, laughing at a joke one of the math teachers had made when the receptionist, Mrs. Higgins, tapped my shoulder. Jennifer, dear, there's someone at the main gate asking for you. He says he's a friend from home. My heart gave a small, involuntary twitch. Did he give a name? I asked, keeping my voice steady. A Mr. Luke Lynn, Mrs. Higgins said, looking at me curiously. He doesn't have a visitor's pass, so I told him he had to wait outside the gata. I set my cider down on the table. Thank you, Mrs. Higgins. I'll go see him. Clara looked at me with concern.
do.
You want me to come with you, Jen? No. It's all right, I said, giving her a small, reassuring smile. It's just some unfinished business. I walked out of the warm stone building and stepped into the courtyard. The cold air hit my face, instantly waking me up. I walked down the gravel path toward the heavy iron gates of the academy. There he stood. Luke was wearing his heavy black winter coat, the collar pulled up against the biting wind. He looked pale, his eyes rimmed with red, and his hands were stuffed deep into his pockets. When he saw me walking toward him, his face lit up with a mixture of relief and raw, desperate hope. Jen, he breathed, stepping forward as the gatekeeper buzzed me through. I stopped about 3 feet away from him. I didn't reach out. I kept my hands in my pockets, looking at him. It was a strange feeling. For 7 years, this man had been the center of my universe. Every choice I made, every meal I cooked, every plan I laid out had been designed around his comfort, his schedule, his likes and dislikes. Now, looking at him, he felt like a character from a book I had read a long time ago. The emotional tether had snapped so completely that I felt no anger, no resentment, only a quiet, profound emptiness where my love for him used to be. Luke, I said quietly, what are you doing here? I came to see you, he said, his voice trembling slightly. He took a hand out of his pocket, reaching toward me, but stopped when he saw my neutral expression. I've been calling you. Eva. Been texting. You never answered. I told you in my message before I left. I said, my voice calm and even. We shouldn't get married. I've already explained it to our parents. There was nothing more to say. No, that's not fair, Jen. His voice rose slightly, a touch of his old, impatient tone creeping in before he quickly softened it. You can't just end 7 years of a relationship over a text message. It was a misunderstanding. Ivy, she's just a colleague. I swear nothing happened between us. The photo shoot, she was crying because she had no one to celebrate her birthday with, and I felt sorry for her. I didn't think it would hurt you this much. I looked at him, his frantic explanations washing over me. Luke, I said, interrupting him gently. You think I left because of Ivy? He blinked confused. Wasn't it? You saw the photos and you got mad. Ivy was just the catalyst, I said, looking into his eyes. I left because of the pads. He froze. His face went from pale to a dull, painful red. I know, he stammered, his eyes dropping to the wet cobblestones. I know I was insensitive. I didn't know about the allergy. I forgot. I searched it up online, Jen. I realize now how painful it must have been for you. I'm sorry. I really am. Look, I bought these for you. He reached into his heavy coat pocket and pulled out a package. It was the exact brand of organic, adhesive-free pads I had used for years. The packaging was pristine. He must have gone to great lengths to find them, perhaps importing them or searching through specialized shops in our home city before flying out. He held them out to me like a peace offering, his hands shaking slightly in the cold. I looked at the package in his hands, then up at his face. A small, sad smile touched my lips. Do you know how long I used this brand, Luke? I asked. He swallowed hard. A long time, 7 years, I said. Then the entire time we were together, I told you about my allergy 17 times. You laughed at me. You called me high maintenance. You couldn't remember it once in 7 years. I was stupid, he pleaded, a tear finally escaping his eye and rolling down his cheek. I was selfish, but I can change. Jen, look, I flew all the way here. I'll do whatever it takes. We can move here. If you want, I'll apply for a transfer. Just come back to me. Don't throw away everything we built. We didn't build anything together, Luke, I said softly. I built a home and you lived in it. The wind swept through the courtyard, rustling the dry ivy on the stone walls. I used to think that you were just a cold person. I continued, my voice steady, though my chest felt tight with a final, lingering sorrow for the girl I used to be. I thought you just didn't have the capacity to care for someone else. I told myself that you're harsh. Words were just your personality and that your occasional sweetness was enough. But then I saw how you treated Ivy. Luke opened his mouth to protest, but I raised a hand to stop him. You prepared pads and painkillers for her. You remembered her birthday. You spent hours taking photos with her, smiling, rubbing her shoulders, calling her your little princess. You had the capacity to be gentle, Luke. You had the capacity to be thoughtful, protective, and kind. I took a deep breath, the cold air filling my lungs. You just didn't want to use it on me. The words hung in the air between us, heavy and undeniable. Luke's hand fell slowly to his side, the package of pads still clutched in his fingers. Desperate, defensive arguments seemed to drain out of him all at once, leaving him looking hollowed out, older than his 30 years. I took you for granted, he whispered, his head bowed, because you were always there. You always ran after me. I thought you would never leave. I know, I said, and that was my mistake. I taught you that you could treat me poorly and I would still be there. I'm sorry I allowed that to happen for so long. He looked up at me, his eyes filled with a desperate, heartbreaking regret. Is there really no chance, not even a little one, if I stay here, if I show you every day? No, Luke, I said, and for the first time, I felt a deep, genuine sense of peace. The girl who chased you for 4 years and waited for you for 3 is gone. I don't love you anymore, and without that love, there's nothing left to save. I stepped back, moving away from the gate. Have a safe flight back, I said. Please, don't come here again. I turned around and walked back toward the school building. I didn't look back. I heard the iron gates close behind me and the soft crunching sound of my own boots on the gravel was the only sound that followed me into the warm, brightly lit school. 3 years passed like water, flowing under a bridge. My exchange program ended, but instead of returning home, I applied for a permanent teaching position at St. Jude's Academy. The principal, pleased with my performance and my integration into the school community, eagerly sponsored my work visa. I bought a small cottage on the outskirts of York with a tiny garden where I planted yellow primroses and lavender. Occasionally, I would get news from home through Sarah. Luke had left our old school a year after I departed. He had moved back to his hometown, a quiet coastal city, to live near his parents. He had married. Sarah told me that he had become very quiet, almost invisible in the local teaching community, a far cry from the confident Arrogant young man he had been. Ivy's internship had ended and she had moved on to another school in a different district without Luke's protective mentorship. She had struggled to adjust to the high-pressure environment of the senior high school curriculum and had eventually transitioned into administrative work. As for me, my life was simple, quiet, and profoundly peaceful. One Saturday in April, the sky was a brilliant clear blue and the daffodils were in full bloom along the city walls. I walked down to the local farmer's market carrying a woven canvas. Big! I stopped by a flower stall, admiring the fresh eucalyptus and pale pink roses. Beautiful, aren't they? A voice said beside me. I turned to see a man about my age wearing a dark green wax jacket holding a wooden crate of fresh organic honey. It was Arthur, the local biology teacher who had joined St. Jude's the previous year. He was a quiet, gentle man who spent his weekends volunteering at the local nature reserve. I smiled, selecting a small bunch of lavender. Are you going to the school charity drive next week? He asked, his tone warm and easy. I am, I said. I've promised to bake some lemon tarts. Excellent. In that case, I'll make sure to save you a spot next to the honey stall, he said, his eyes crinkling at the corners with a soft, genuine warmth. And by the way, I remember you saying last month that you wanted to try that old tea room in Harrogate, but didn't want to go alone. If you're free this Sunday, I'd love to take you. I looked at him. There was no pressure in his gaze, no demanding expectation, no hidden edges of impatience, just a simple, respectful invitation from someone who had listened to my passing words and remembered them. I smiled, my heart light and steady. I'd like that very much, Arthur, I said as I walked back to my cottage, the spring breeze carrying the scent of damp earth and blooming flowers. I realized I hadn't thought about my allergy, my old pain, or the ring on my middle finger in a very long time. The scars were still there, faint and white, but the skin over them had healed, smooth and whole.